Good morning. Welcome, everybody. I can see people are joining as they come in. Hello. There's a flurry early on. Welcome. We're just going to let people join, but welcome to our session on motivating others with the Sir George Buckley Leadership Centre. Thank you for joining us this morning. As we're waiting for people to kind of connect and join, it'd be great to just find out where you're from, actually, just to say hello. So you've all come in on mute. You know, don't take any offense. It's just because there's quite a lot of us today, so we just want to make sure that there's no background noise. There will definitely be time for questions, but we'll really be using chat as our main way of interacting. So I wonder if you wanted to just open the chat, which I'm sure everyone knows where it is now, but at the bottom of the screen, and just let us know where you're from, which company you're coming from, and whereabouts in the country, in the beautiful sunshine, you're joining us from today. So I'm coming from Manchester, which is very sunny, unusually so. Welcome. Hello, Mary. A familiar face straight away. Nice to see you. Who else have we got? And still see people still coming in. We're just going to give them a couple of minutes. Go. Fab. So we've got a few colleagues from Thornton, Ross and Huddersfield, haven't we? So welcome to all of you. Leeds. Ooh, sunny Slaithwaite. Lovely. Yeah, welcome to you, Don and Amy. Fantastic. Sunny Clecky, and I'm hoping that everywhere that people are joining in from is sunny. I think it is. Brilliant. Brighouse, fab. Lots from Leeds, lots from Kirklees. Fantastic. Welcome, everybody. Okay, let's just give a couple more minutes. Fantastic. Morning, Paul and Stuart as well. Fab. And Louise. Okay. Great. Just gonna check the waiting room. Fantastic. If you're joining us, you can open your chat and you'll be able to let us know. If you just joined us, just let us know where you're coming from, company, whereabouts, if it's sunny or not. Hopefully it is. I've had to close my window. I hope I don't start melting. I've had to close my window because there's somebody cutting paving slabs outside really helpfully this morning. So I'm not getting the nice breeze that I was a little bit earlier, but yes, it's beautiful. So yeah, let us know if you're just joining us. Let us know where you are coming from. We're expecting a full house today. I know for this one and for some of the other sessions that we've got coming up over the next couple of months, we're pretty much sold out. So hopefully some of you have already got places at those, and if you haven't, we'll be sharing the link to them afterwards anyway, and just keep an eye out for cancellations. Okay, we'll give people a minute more maybe just to let themselves in. There's a couple of people I can see still. It's looking like the audio isn't fully connecting. Jordan, I know you're in the, I will introduce my colleague Jordan in a second in the background, but there's a couple of people. Lisa is one of them who I can see can maybe just message them directly and see if they need to maybe dial in and dial out to get that to work. Fab. Thanks, Jordan. Okay, so a couple of people just joining us now. If you haven't already, just let us know where you're joining us from, which company, if it's sunny where you are. flicking around, just frantically letting people in as a bit of a flurry. Okay, we'll give them the last minute of joining and then we will get started. Here we go. Okay, it's 25 to now, so I think we will get started, and if anybody joins us, we will let them in as we go through. If there's people from your organisation who haven't yet managed to connect, as I said, we'll be sharing a link to this session with you afterwards as well. But a huge welcome to the first of our Summer Leadership Masterclasses. This one's going to be about motivating others, and as I said, it's great to have so many of you here and joining us. The aim of this session, and the aim of the rest of these sessions in this series, is to give you a bit of a taster, really, of the content and the style that we will be using in the CMI programs, which are going to start later in the year. And it's also to just give you a bit of a summer injection of leadership, inspiration really, and to give you some bite-sized topics and to sort of share some ideas. And today we're going to be spending a bit of time exploring the topic of motivation. I'll be saying more at the end about the upcoming CMI programs, a bit more about how you can find some more information then, but this is all in conjunction with the Sir George Buckley Leadership Centre, which is in the Huddersfield Business School. So let me just move my bar of people so I can see my move my slides along. So I'm Naomi. I'm your facilitator for today. I'm a member of the facilitation team at the Leadership Centre as well. So I'll be delivering on the upcoming level 5 and level 7 programs. And we've also got my colleague Jordan, who is in the background helping us with all the technology for the session and has been instrumental in getting these sessions set up and will be a key point of contact for you in finding out a bit more about our programs and our centre generally. So good person to have in mind, and I'll share his details at the end. As I said to everybody who joined us at the start, you've come on mute just because there's quite a number of you today, and it just means that hopefully everybody can hear. There's no background noise, but please let's use chat to interact. If you've got questions, we'll have time for questions at the end, but if there's any burning questions as we go through, please put them in chat, and if I don't see it, Jordan will be keeping an eye on that, and he will keep a list of those questions and we'll answer them at the end. So that's how we work. I'm sure everybody knows, but if you haven't found it, the chat bar is, the chat button is along the toolbar at the bottom. So please use that to get in touch and to interact with me on this session. So I am, let's tell you a little bit about me. So I'm an accredited coach and facilitator. I work as an executive coach, and I really specialise in leadership development, working with leaders of all levels to help them better understand and to develop their own style of leadership. I work across all different kinds of sectors. There's some clients that I'm working with at the moment who are part of the group with us today. I work across SMEs, public, private, and a number of charities as well. And before this, I had a corporate career, initially in local authority, and then for National Grid, really working in lots of senior roles, leading large teams, and also focusing on developing talent and supporting people development too. So that's a little bit about me. And in terms of today then, we're going to explore some of the most recent thinking around motivation, what it is, and to help you better understand what really makes team individuals motivated. And I want you to come away with some tools, some strategies, some new ideas to help you get the most from yourself and from the people that you work with. So hopefully that is what you were expecting from this session. And let's get into it then. So when we talk about motivation, it's as easy as this, isn't it? If I do a quick scour of the internet, it literally brings up thousands of websites that profess to providing you with the motivation that you need, or quotes or inspirational statements. And I don't know how many of you are on LinkedIn regularly, but I seem to be flooded with, nicely formatted quotes and statements that are seen to kind of be motivational. And yes, it gives you that initial buzz of, yeah, great, that gives me a call to action. But I suppose one of the challenges with these sorts of statements are they might be things that motivate the person who's written them. They might not be something that motivates you. And they might fire you up initially in that moment. But will that continue? Will that statement be able to see you through times of challenge, times of things that you need to overcome? So I think when we think about motivation, often we are considering some of these short, quick fire techniques. Let's try a question then. So are you motivated to be here today? You're probably sitting there thinking, you're asking me that? I'm here, aren't I? It's a bit of a silly question, maybe, when you've taken the time out of your day to join us today. But asking that question probably raises more questions than it does answers. How do you define if you're motivated? What criteria do you use to define motivation? What does motivation actually even mean? It's a statement that we use a lot, but what does it actually even mean? So let's try it a different way. If that's really the wrong question to be asking, a better one to understand motivation is why. Why are you motivated to be here today? And I'm going to ask you to answer that in a poll. So let me just launch this poll for you. Oh, 1 second. So on your screens, you should be seeing a poll of reasons. It's completely anonymous. Just have a scroll through. What answer best matches why you're motivated to be here today? I'm just pausing as I let people respond. But there's lots of different reasons there. I might find out in a moment the majority of you just taking your role as leaders or managers in your organizations really seriously, and you want to know how to better motivate your team. It might be that you just love learning new things, and this is another opportunity to do that. It might be that the pandemic has brought real challenges around motivation, which I think we can all relate to, and you're thinking about being demotivated yourself. Or some of the other ones a bit lower down that list, which might not relate to this particular session, but I'm sure you've all had scenarios or meetings, things that you needed to do that were done out of not a motivation to learn, but actually a motivation you can't not. It would look bad if you didn't. Okay, so I think most people have voted. If it hasn't come up for you on a phone or an iPad, sometimes that happens, but let's just go for it. And I'm going to end the poll 1 second, and I'm going to share the results. Okay, so here we go. Oh, let me just close that a little bit. Hopefully you can all see that. Jordan, just give me a thumbs up or a quick note in chat just to say that that's all okay and people can see it before I start talking around it and it's not on the screen. I think it's there. Fab. So great, thanks, Jordan. As you can see, as probably as expected, a lot of you are here today. You've got lots of stuff on but you're here because you want to learn something new, or you want to find out different ways to motivate your team. You know, a couple of you have shared that you are feeling a little bit demotivated yourself. No one's just biding their time before Loose Women starts, which I'm glad about. But as you can see from this, really, the different reasons for being motivated bring about very different energies. So it isn't about asking if someone is motivated. It's really more about asking questions to reveal the reasons why someone's acting. So if we reach for the I'm just going to close that for a second so I can see my screen better. If we reach for the industry definition of motivation, it often comes up as the why we act, or the energy to act. But it's not as simple as we are or we're not. There's a lot of nuance behind the reasons why we act. And that's the important part to think about, because that gives you greater insight into what is actually going on for that individual, for that team, and what results that might drive. So that's what we're going to explore a bit more. I'm going to say more on that. But really, that's the key thing. Why? What are the reasons for acting? That's where you get the most insight. So let you into a secret then. People are actually always motivated. So the question isn't if, it's why. So I think quite often we assume that someone is or isn't motivated to do something. The question, actually, people always have a motivation, but it might be a different motivation to yours or to mine. So a key reason, as it says on the slide, why our attempts to motivate might not work is because we believe that motivation is something that people have, don't have. So the energy, the kind of the impact of doing things because we want to do it, because we personally get something from it, is a very different impact than doing something because we have to. On the face of it, they might generate similar results. You know, the person's doing that thing, they're attending that meeting, they're putting themselves forward for that project. But actually, the reasons behind why they're doing that is really key for this. So let's consider these examples then. Again, on the face of it, you might get quite similar results. So you might have a direct report who's motivated by making the most sales to get the maximum bonus possible in the team. Or a direct report who's motivated by making sales to really meet the customer's need. A student who's motivated by the score that they achieve to be able to impress a teacher or to be able to impress their peers. Or again, a student who scores highly, but who's motivated to demonstrate the impact themselves of the effort they've put in. And then finally, another example, someone who's motivated to take on a new project because of the fear for their job if they don't put themselves forward. Or someone who's motivated to take on a new project because of the opportunity it presents for them. It might be a very similar kind of situation. You might get a similar result, but actually the motivation behind that is very, very different. So just, I wonder if anybody's got any thoughts on if we think about that last one for a second, for the differences in motivation there. What might the impact of one or other of those lead to? Any thoughts? Just put it into it into chat. Just like I said, on the face of it, you probably see the same thing. If you're a line manager, you've got somebody who's putting themselves forward for a project, but actually it can be quite different, the results that you get. So any thoughts on what the difference in the impact of either of those two might be? Stress levels, great, definitely. You know, in that first one, potentially much higher levels of stress, and in turn stress comes to impact on well-being. Just doing enough. Okay, so actually the output of the project in that first one is they're just doing enough to get by. They're just the quality of the outcome, they're just doing it to sort of keep the head above water. So the results that you get as a result, the care that they put in, passion to do the project. So if that project is working with customers or other colleagues or in other offices, for example, you know, if they haven't got passion or energy or any kind of drive to do that project, that can really impact on the other people who are involved. Long-term consistent outcomes, definitely. So in the short term, you might say, great, that project's been taken care of, that person's doing it, fine, don't have to think about that. But the outcome for both of those is very different, which is why we need to think about reasons that people act. And that's what's so key here. Thank you for those inputs. I suppose it does raise the question of, if someone is motivated, whatever they're motivated by, if they're going to deliver, they're going, and I know we've talked a little bit about that on the last slide, haven't we? But it does raise the question of, if they're motivated for some reason, why should I care? But like in the last slide, we often confuse productivity with motivation, how much someone gets done with how motivated they are. But it's very unwise to confuse to link that meaning that person's thriving and flourishing. And they're the sorts of things that we need to sustain, as someone said in the last question, to sustain good outcomes, to sustain results, to sustain well-being and engagement of their team. And without that, those short-term gains that you get can really impact longer-term results. So motivational science previously was very much based on this idea of a kind of a carrot and stick approach, or early motivational models were based on this idea of carrot and stick approach. But actually they were based on using animals as a model for human behavior. Does anybody know what I mean? I'm sure you do, but what do I mean by carrot and stick? So when I talk about the idea of motivation by a carrot and stick approach, what does that mean to you? Any thoughts again in chat? Yeah. Absolutely. Fear or reward. So carrot is that idea of rewards, incentives, status, promotions. The stick is that pressure, fear, threat, guilt, all of those sorts of things, praise or punishment. And traditional, quite often still, or very, very often, performance management systems, performance reviews, or have an element of alignment to this carrot and stick approach, you know, in terms of the way that we reward performance. But if this doesn't work, because I think that's, you know, we often believe that you know, people are motivated to get promotions, to get reward, to get to, you know, in salary, all those sorts of things. And yes, there's probably an element of that. But if that doesn't solely work, what does? And I think the reason we often don't challenge the idea of this kind of carrot and stick approach is because, one, we simply don't kind of question the practices that have been in place for a long period of time. We don't have the knowledge or the time to be able to apply the science of motivation. And often people don't understand the nature of their own motivation either. So if we're unhappy at work, or we're not feeling that we're sort of valued enough, often we'll ask for maybe a promotion or more money. And then that, if people can't comply with that, or we're not able to get that, then we don't know what else we can go, because that's the easiest hook for us to show sort of value and to drive motivation. And it says on the side there, it's quite a dilemma really, because as leaders, we're being held accountable to do something that we just can't do, and which is directly motivate other people. But what we can do is we can create the right conditions. So people are motivated by their own personal drivers. We can create the right conditions. So let's talk a little bit more about that then. So this is often termed the ABC of motivation when we think about the conditions that we might create. And if a carrot and stick approach doesn't work or drive the sustainable results, long-term results that look after people's well-being and as well as the productivity that you might get, what does these conditions do? Does anybody know what the A, B, or C stand for in the ABC of motivation? Any thoughts on any of these? Anybody come across this model before? Just going to wait, but maybe not. Okay. So the ABC of motivation relate to three psychological needs. So the most recent advances in motivational science relate to the fact that whether or not these three psychological needs are met is directly related to the type of motivation that people are experiencing. And as a result, the type of motivation drives those longer term results versus shorter term gains. So A stands for autonomy. Now this is all an evolution from early works. I'm sure some of you have come across Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and Deci did some work on kind of self-determination theory. Some of you might have heard of an author called Daniel Pink as well, who's written a book called Drive, which is really closely linked. Those are all sort of evolutions of this, but the really current thinking is that these are the three psychological needs. So autonomy. People need to perceive that they have choices, that they're exercising these choices, and that they're responsible for their actions. They need to feel a sense of control in their lives and the directions that they take. Belonging, which is sometimes termed relatedness or purpose, but an R and a P don't sit so neatly, do they, in an ABC? But they're kind of all wrapped up in this idea of belonging. People need to care about and be cared about without an ulterior motive, to feel connected to others. We've talked a lot about that, I'm sure, over the last 18 months around the importance and the impact of connection in some organizations, if you've been working from home, has. And they also need to feel that they are contributing to something which has meaning. And competence, or often or sometimes used the term mastery. So people need to feel effective at meeting the requirements of their role, everyday challenges. They need to feel that they have the ability and the opportunity to demonstrate skill over time and to experience a sense of personal growth. There's that innate human desire that we have to learn. So there's a need to strive for growth, for mastery, achievement. So these are the three conditions that really drive and impact on the types of motivation that people experience. And importantly, if one of those areas is impacted, so for example, as I just mentioned before around that lack of connection, then the others are diminished too. So all three really need to be considered. So the question then changes, if you're coming to this session thinking, how can I motivate my team? Or it changes from what can I do to motivate my team to how can I better facilitate the satisfaction of mine or my team's autonomy, belonging, and competence. Because it's really important to note that our human nature, like I said before, strives to reach individual human potential. That's hardwired. It's an innate part of who we are, but it doesn't happen automatically. And the workplace that we're in or the environment that we're in either facilitates that and helps us do that, which drives some of those more positive elements of motivation, enables our kind of us to thrive, or it disrupts it. It gets in the way of us being able to reach, to access some of these psychological needs. And sometimes conventional practices have undermined those more than they've supported them, actually. So let's think about this idea of a spectrum of motivation. So I'm going to try for a second now and pull together what we've been talking about so far. So this model is based on some of the science that I've been talking about, and it aims to explain the impact those different forms of motivation have. So if we think about the fact that those psychological needs drive what type of motivation we have, recognizing that we're all motivated in some way all of the time, this model helps to look at what impact that drives. So the horizontal axis is those psychological needs and those things that we've just been talking about over the last couple of slides, that everybody, no matter the culture, race, gender, have a need for. And satisfaction of those generates energy, vitality, positive well-being. The vertical axis is related to self-regulation. So the idea here is that the level to which we can manage our own feelings and counteract maybe some of those psychological needs aren't in place, or there's some things that thwart them, how easy it is for us to counteract. So let's just consider, and this just before I go on to considering what these different areas mean, let's just consider a second. A lot of this comes from this recent work by a lady called Susan Fowler, who's done lots of work with Daniel Pink and Ken Blanchard as well, who's written work on situational leadership that some of you might recognize. And it talks about this idea, because you can see on the very right hand axis, on the right hand side, the things below the line are suboptimal types of motivation, and the things above the line are referred to as optimal. And optimal motivation, this definition says, it's about having positive energy, vitality, and a sense of well-being required to sustain the pursuit of achievement of meaningful goals while thriving and flourishing. So they're the ones where that's where our psychological needs are met, and we're able to really experience some of that positive energy that comes from that. So let's consider this in practice again then in an example. So that we've got an individual attending a meeting, and you might notice an individual in a meeting sitting there texting on their phone, or kind of, looking quite disinterested. And the initial assumption might be that, well, they're just not motivated to do their job or to do this. Actually, the reality is that they probably are, but maybe for different reasons. So there's 6 motivational outlooks that are referred to in this model. Those ones that form part of the low quality or suboptimal are termed disinterested, external, or imposed. So, if we think about disinterested, it may be that that person just doesn't find any value in that meeting at all. They might feel like they have to be there, but it's a waste of time. This is probably the closest that you might get to the idea of apathy. External, which is where you see the meeting as an opportunity to exert your power or your status, or to take advantage of maybe an external reward, your image, some of those external factors. Imposed, you feel you have to be there. You feel pressured. You feel fear that if you don't go, it's going to look bad for you. And then on the other side, those types of motivation, so aligned, you're able to link the meeting and your reason for being there to something of significant value for you. So that might be learning something new. It might be really helping you to connect with others, but there's some significant value. Integrated is, it's even more than significant. It's directly linked to your purpose, your work or life purpose. It gave you an opportunity to really have a voice on an important issue, maybe. And that inherent, slightly lower, isn't it? But it's about, you enjoy meeting others. So this model tries to pull together the impact of whether or not you're experiencing positive, the type of motivation that you're experiencing, and how that might play out in terms of those impacts on you as an organization. So I know there's probably so much more that we could say about this particular model, but I just wanted to share this with you. And that book's a fantastic one. If you're interested, she's written a lot of articles as well, but it just for the first time sort of pulls all the essences of what we've talked about together. And she refers to the idea of the 3 suboptimal motivation outlooks, those 3 at the bottom, being like junk food. She uses the words junk food. So these are either tangible or intangible. It's a bit like when you eat, fast food. Initially, it's enticing, but actually the thrill of it sort of wears off quite quickly, doesn't sustain you. So they can be enticing in the moment, but they don't lead to those, flourishing positive energy that sustains our performance over time. Whereas those 3 optimal outlooks are referred to as the health food of motivation. They might require more thought, but they really generate the higher quality energy. So it's that whole idea, if we think about it, that motivation's a bit like friends. It's not how many you have, it's the quality of those that really matters. So it's the type of motivation that we're encouraging in individuals that will help us to drive the results that those longer term results that we want. So I'm conscious, this is a bit of a whistle stop tour of motivation, but I want you to go away with something practical. So I want to come back to, these psychological needs being met is so key to this. So let's just think for a second about those in a little bit more detail, because being able to support those being met for individuals are the things that drive those higher quality types of motivation. So first one being autonomy. These are some of the things that you can do to encourage autonomy or encourage an environment where people feel they have autonomy. So fostering a choice mindset, encouraging people to really recognize that they have choices and options and ownership of decisions. Checking in and not checking on. So it's not about checking up on whether someone's done something, checking in on how they're getting on, asking more questions, focusing on helping people or yourself to distinguish what is and what isn't within our control. So, you know, I'm sure some of you have seen doing the rounds on LinkedIn over the pandemic, especially early on. There's a lot of focus on thinking around the things that we can control. So we can't control, you know, the news and what's happening, but we can control how we respond to it. We can control how much we engage with that, you know, really thinking about what is it in my situation that I can control and what can't I, and putting my energy towards those things that I can. Allowing yourself to enable people to feel autonomous by making sure you're really clear with expectations and boundaries at the outset. You don't necessarily always have to set them as leaders, but making sure that they're there so that people can work within a really clear remit. And really encouraging individuals to take more ownership of their work, getting them to input into their own goals. Maybe it's objectives, maybe it's just what you're looking to achieve as a team, getting that buy-in early on. So what I'd like to do is just pause for a minute, and you don't have to write this in, well, actually, it would be quite good if you could write it into chat if you felt comfortable. But I'd just like you to think, okay, so about autonomy, if I was to take one specific action to increase the autonomy of your team or yourself, what would it be? What's the first step you could take? And popping it into chat just means actually that we can all see each other's, and it might give inspiration to other people about ideas that they could take. So what one thing could you do, or what first step could you do to increase the autonomy in your team or for yourself? I'm just going to pause while people have a little think. But as I said, it'd be great if you were comfortable. Okay, so focusing on what is and isn't in your control, definitely, that's such a key one. It's something I've started practicing a lot, you know, when things get overwhelming. Okay, what can I do something about, and what can't I do something about here? Expectations. Okay, so really that being something to focus on. What are the expectations of me in this particular project or this particular task? Or what are the expectations you have of somebody else? Great. Any others? Results-based focus, not process-based. Yeah, so giving people the opportunity to really maybe do things slightly differently. Of course, if there's, you know, safety processes that need to be followed, but if there's certain things that don't have to just be done one way, encourage people to be creative, and that will drive more ownership and more autonomy. Encouraging team members to have knowledge, to empower them to take more ownership. Yeah, so thinking about where they might benefit from an increase in knowledge so that they feel really empowered to do that. Challenging the system. Yeah. Thinking about, why does stuff all have to be done in the way that it's done? Is there certain places where it could be done differently? Checking in. Yeah, fantastic. Keep them coming. There's some great ones here. Getting the team together in a non-work formal environment. I think that's really helpful for the next one as well, actually, Katie. So let's just do the same for the other two. And it might be that one of the three, A, B, or C, resonate more with you than some of the others. So just focus on that one. But if we think about belonging, then things that you can do, actively connecting the work that you do or your team do to a greater purpose, you know, a higher level business objective. So they see how they're contributing to business success. Explore your values, the team's values, and the company values, and see how these align. Make that direct alignment. Be willing to ask people how they feel and listen to their response. create opportunities for people to connect with each other more. You know, you had a great one there, kind of, Katie, where people build in rapport, and that's so difficult, especially for teams who haven't worked together. I know a lot of you will have still been in the office, but for teams who haven't, really creating that connection is important. So again, just take a moment to think, if this is the one out of the three that resonates most with you, what could you do for your team or for yourself? What one step or first step could you take to increase a sense of belonging, to increase the environment or the ability for this psychological need to be met? And again, if you want to pop that in chat so people can see the ideas that are coming up, align tasks to people that get motivated by those tasks. Yeah, but actually have a conversation to better understand what really motivates people, what things really drive that positive energy, and then try as much as you can to align some of those tasks. Great one. Anything else? Active listening, definitely. Really listen, and it's taking the time to really listen and let people feel heard. Personal KPIs, yeah, KPIs that help, that they are really interested in. I think this comes on to the next one as well. You know, development KPIs. Ask for their thoughts and ideas. Definitely, that allows you to feel more likely that they are contributing to something that means something to them too. Yeah, great, thank you. And finally, competence and mastery. And I think this definitely linked to your one as well, again, Katie, but that idea of how you can encourage and enable an environment where people feel that they're able to meet or grow and have personal growth and achieve and strive for excellence. Really focus more on teams, on the strengths of the team. Quite often we spend a lot of time thinking about, okay, what are your weaknesses, what are your development areas? Actually, what are our strengths as a team, as individuals, and how can we utilize those more and maybe in different situations? Encourage discussions on learning rather than just performance. You know, what we're learning here, what's the key learnings from that? Setting learning objectives and goals, as well as, you know, business objectives, you know, targets that need to be met. Also, what are the learning objectives that that person has for this year? Use a coaching style, which links back to that sort of the idea of asking more questions, but that coaching style, which we will talk a lot about on our programs, because it's so important for every aspect, I think, of leadership, but helping to empower others. Ask the team what they've learned as well as what they've achieved. What's the key learnings from this? Really get that learning embedded. So just for the last minute, if this one was the one of the three that jumped out at you, what one step might you take in your teams or for yourself, your business, to help create an environment where this psychological need is met? Any thoughts? And again, pop them into chat. You can see there, I've just popped a couple of links at the bottom as well to some really good articles on this. So encouraging people to each other, yeah. Drawing on one-to-ones, reshaping one-to-ones to chat about learning, and as well as productivity. So what have you achieved, but also what have you learned? How can that help you in coming challenges that you've got and your other targets that you've got? Yeah, we'll talk a lot on our programs about this idea of psychological safety, which I'm sure some of you have heard about as well, and that idea that, you know, helping people to think where it's right and appropriate, that it's okay to sometimes get things wrong, because you learn from those. Thank you so much for all of those contributions, and hopefully that's given you some ideas of some of the practical things that you could do to encourage those psychological needs to be met, which really help drive those positive, optimal types of motivation. So I'm gonna draw us to a close then. I think, the key things that we've talked about to enable people to thrive, psychological needs that are required by every human being need to be met. And those are autonomy, belonging, and competence. We can't directly motivate others, but we can create the conditions that allow for these psychological needs to be met. And how well these are met have significant impacts for long-term and also sometimes short-term results too. And they really impact our ability to sustain performance over time, to encourage positive well-being. So that is our masterclass, our relatively short overview of motivation, but I really hope it's giving you some new ideas, some ways of thinking about it, and sparks your interest to maybe explore some of the references that I talked about a little bit more. Before I open up to questions, and we'll see if there are any through in chat as well, just wanted to signpost again the fact that this is one of a series of masterclasses that we've got coming up over the next couple of months. So we've got emotional intelligence, the authentic leader, supporting and managing diverse teams, and work-based exercise and well-being. As you probably know, if you've registered on LinkedIn, we've been sending some updates that we're pretty much full for most of these, but you can keep an eye out for cancellations if you haven't already got a place, and also let us know if there's any particularly interested if you haven't been able to get a place, because we can send you a link to a recording of the session afterwards. So get in touch with us or go through the link to Eventbrite if you want to sort of see if there's any places left on those ones. And then, as I said, these sessions are really intended to give you a flavour of the programmes that we've got upcoming. So we've got some CMI level 5 and level 7 accredited programmes which start in September. And we really like you to get in touch with us if you wanted to chat about which one is the best fit, to get any more information. But the really fantastic news is that we have very recently secured funding for these programmes from the West Yorkshire Consortium of colleges. So I'm going to show you a slide in a second about that, under their high performing workplaces scheme for both our level 5 and our level 7. And that means that you can, if you're an eligible business that sits within the Leeds City region, you can receive 40% funding towards each place that you take on one of our open programs. So here's a little bit more about that scheme and the regions that are involved. Is that it isn't just limited to private sector, it's public sector too, and it isn't just limited to SMEs, it's larger organisations as well. So the criteria are quite broad for this, as long as you are with the Leeds City region. So if that's of interest, please get in touch with us. We will be sending everybody an email after this session with a link to the session that we've had today, and with a bit more information on our programs and on that fund. You can always get in touch if you've got any questions. And I just want to open up then for, if there are any. Can I come to you first, Jordan, and see if anything has come through? I didn't see any specific questions through chat as I was going, but I just want to check in with you first whether there are anything that came up as we were talking. I know Jordan's been having a couple of technical issues. No specific questions that have come through so far. Fantastic. Okay, so I'll open up. If anybody has any questions, please, should we do raising hand, Jordan, I think, because I'm not sure you're able to take yourselves off mute. So you can either pop it into chat and just say, I've got a question, or put your question in chat, or you've got a raise hand feature as well. Yes, we will. Yeah, absolutely. We can share that information. Yeah, so if you raise hand, which I think is now in reactions. I know Zoom's recently changed, but along the bottom there's a little button that says reactions, and in one of those is a sort of raise hand, or just take your video off and wave at us as well. If you wanted to, you can ask us a question that way, just to notify us that you've got one, or pop it into chat. Yeah, so, but thank you, Karen. We will share. slides. We will share a link so you can watch it again if you wanted, or share it with colleagues if you wanted to as well. And as I said, we can share links to upcoming masterclass programs if you haven't managed to get a place on those as well. Okay, any questions can you see? Jordan, I don't think I can. Just going to scroll through my screen. Okay. Well, we are at 25 past. So if there are no questions, then I just want to take the time to thank you once again for joining us this morning. It's been our pleasure. Fab. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure, and we're really, really excited about hopefully seeing some of you in September, some of your colleagues in September on one of our programs, and launching those. So hopefully we'll see you there. Please get in touch if you've got any questions. Thank you.